Great. Thank you. Love that video. Well, welcome. My name is Sarah Kane, and on behalf of myself and Mimosa Montag, my co-host and moderator, we want to welcome you this evening to our forum, Voting for Delegates in the California Democratic Party, the who, what, where, why, and how. I'm a Bay Area native with I've been living in Vallejo for 8 years, and I'm the co-founder of the Vallejo Active Voters group on Facebook. Mimosa is a Mendocino County native and a 6-year resident of Vallejo and the co-founder of the Vallejo Benicia Indivisible chapter. These special elections, which are happening all over the state, are also known to some of us as the most important democratic elections you've never heard of. And aside from the 1/3 of the California Democratic Party delegates that are appointed and another 1/3 that come from county committees, this last third are voted in by folks just like you and me in assembly district known as AD delegate elections. And so to help all of us understand this process better and how we at the individual voter level can help make our voices heard, we have with us tonight all the 10 candidates who are running as the AD 14 Progressives for Change slate. We will be hearing from each one of them briefly as they share with us their motivations for running and how, as a delegate, they believe they can advocate for and be influential on issues that will directly affect us here in District 14. District 14 is Vallejo, Benicia, Concord, Pleasant Hill, Clayton, Bay Point, Pittsburgh, Rodeo, Martinez. It's the district that Assemblymember Tim Grayson represents. So we thank all of you for tuning in tonight, and we want to thank all the candidates for making time and being with us here as well. Just briefly, I'm going to let you know about the agenda for this evening. After this introduction, Susan George, who is a past delegate and a current candidate, will start us out with a little mini civics lesson on what delegates do, why it's important for us to register to vote, and how the work of the delegates directly affect our local community. We'll go through how to register and how to vote. And then each one of the candidates will speak for about 2.5 to 3 minutes. Finally, we'll take questions from you. You can either post those questions in the Facebook live stream or on the YouTube stream. And of course, you have to have an account and you have to be logged in to do that. And then we'll be monitoring those, and at the end, we'll do the question and answer session. As well, if there's anybody needs technical help at the end of this, we kind of encourage you to start trying to register while we're doing this. Please stay on, and Mimosa and I will stay on and try to help you with that. It should be pretty easy, but sometimes there are glitches. All right, great. Well, Susan, I'm gonna let you take it away.
You're muted. You're muted.
Thank you, Sarah. There you go. Good start, right? Thank you, Sarah, for that great introduction. And Mimosa, thank you for hosting this in Vallejo Active Voters. It's really appreciated. You gave a really good start as to who delegates are in the California Democratic Party. I'm going to speak a little bit more of what their roles and responsibilities are. Delegates conduct important party business at the convention and at other meetings. Regional meetings is an example. Their responsibilities range from helping to author and approve the official party platform, resolutions, legislative and candidate endorsements, electing state party officers, and much more. Being a delegate is a role where once you start doing the work of a delegate, you realize there's so much more there. You can have so much more impact. You can really get to know different elected officials, and you have access. It's not something where, oh my goodness, I have all this access, I have so much power. It's how can you use this access to better the lives of the people in your district? Another thing is that people that are delegates can be appointed to various committees, such as the Platform Committee, the Resolutions Committee, Legislation, Endorsement, Rules Committee. It's very, again, multi-layered, and how much impact you can have is really dependent on what you bring to it. And I assure you that each person here is ready to bring their best and their all. And now you're muted, Sarah.
There we go. Sorry. All right. Thank you, Susan. So again, if you've got questions, please, we will be taking them at the end, but go ahead and start putting them in the chat. So first of all, I just want to talk about who can vote. So any registered Democrat resident in California is eligible to vote in the assembly district in which they reside. How do you sign up? Voting in these elections is separate from voting in our regular elections, so you must specifically register for that and then vote separately in that as well. The dates, you have to register by January 11th, and you can do that at ademelections.com, ademelections.com, all one word. And when you register to vote in the special election, make sure that everything matches the way that you're registered to vote in our regular elections. So your name, the way that's spelled, if you use hyphenations, for instance, your address, your date of birth, it all has to match for you to be able to register properly. Save the confirmation email that you receive, and because you'll need that number. It should be on your ballot, but you'll need that number for confirmation. And so voting this year, it's all paper ballots. There'll be no in-person voting this year, of course, because of COVID-19, but you will receive that paper ballot. Once you do it, once you register online, you'll receive that paper ballot by the 18th. It should be no later than the 18th. You can vote for up to 14 candidates. As they say, 7 candidates listed identifying as self-identifying female, and 7 candidates other than self-identifying female. When you get that paper ballot, make sure you mark your choices and mail it back immediately, because they must receive it by January 27th for it to be counted. The results of the election, they don't give a specific date, but the results will be promptly posted on the California Democratic Party website. And once the ballot counting process has been completed and verified, they'll post that. And of course, we'll all be, helping to keep you posted on that too. We'll be sharing that. Okay, I want to turn it over to Mimosa, and she will be introducing all the candidates. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mimosa Monte-Clark. Nice to see everyone here on the Zoom and all of the people watching on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Don't forget to put any questions you have in the chat, and we'll be getting back to those a little later in the session. I just wanted to introduce each candidate, and we're going to have each candidate answer a question, and then they'll have a few minutes to speak as well, a maximum of 3 minutes, please, and I'll be keeping time. The question we'd like the candidates to answer today is, what motivated you to run, and how do you think your position as a delegate will help you the most and be influential in those areas that motivated you? And we're going to go through this, we're going to go through the candidates alphabetically. I do want to remind the candidates to please not use acronyms or abbreviations, and please explain, as much as you can about this process. A lot of people are still learning, and we really want this to be a learning forum where people can understand the ins and outs, because there's a lot of different things going on with these delegates. So I'll turn it over to our first candidate, which is Thomas Bilbao.
You're muted, Tom.
I knew I was going to do that. Anyway, hi, my name is Thomas Bilbao. I'm running to be your delegate, along with all these other fine folks that we have chosen to be with and come on board together and do a whole bunch of stuff that's going to really make you Democratic voters empowered and know the party better. We all, I think, believe that the Democratic Party needs to be more grassroots than it is sort of corporate or from the top down. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm running, to make sure that the people who are in AD 14 are aware of what's going on, And that's not just the people within Solano County, that's also within Contra Costa County. I made that commitment in my candidate statement, and I'm making that commitment in, every time I speak, and anyone who I talk to, is that I'm not just a candidate for the Solano County voters, I'm a candidate for all of AD 14. And so that's really what my goal is to make sure that the people and constituents within our assembly district are represented and are informed about what's going on at the party level. My personal life, I am an advocate and activist for the LGBTQ community, of which I am a member. I have been with my partner for 17 years. No, take that back, 18 years now. It's a new year. And we live here in Vallejo, and I work on issues all over Solano County for the LGBTQ community in association with the Stonewall Democratic Club, as well as with Solano Pride Center. So that's sort of me. I've been a Democrat for a long time and started working on Democratic issues and working for Democratic candidates in 1987 in Mississippi. Yes, I am a Southern boy from Mississippi. So that's me. And now I'll yield it to the next candidate.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And next we have Carrie Birdsai.
Good evening. I'm so happy to be here with this talented group of folks. My name's Carrie Birdsai. I live in Benicia. I'm a former recovering journalist, former soccer mom, and I've lived in Benicia for 20 years. I currently serve as the chair of the Planning Commission. I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years now. And professionally, I am a communications expert for the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is an environmental nonprofit organization. So what's motivating me to do this and to spend my volunteer hours here? It's because we currently have people calling themselves Democrats and progressives that really aren't either one of them. And they believe in a future that is filled with fossil fuels and with corporate money, and I don't. I believe that we need to address climate change today and start planning for a future that is fossil fuel free. And living in a refinery town, that means coming up with a plan that keeps Benicia and Solano County economically sustainable without a refinery. And right now, a lot of people that are running to represent you in AD 14 actually say they're progressive and they are working with the refinery. I want to work with the refinery in doing what's best for Solano County, Benicia, Vallejo, and AD 14 moving forward, and work with them in ensuring a future that is sustainable and economically viable and environmentally sustainable for all of us. So other issues near and dear to my heart, I have 2 kids that are going to college right now. I really believe in, that education and the lack of funding in our educational system on a national scale is one of the reasons why we have a divided country right now. And so we need to right our ship from the federal level all the way down to the local level. And so that's why I would love to be your candidate, or I'd love to be representing you as a delegate within our state party. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the refineries are a big issue, I think, across all of AD 14, not just here in Solano County. It really affects kind of the whole district. So that's great. Next, I would like to hear from Raskal Kayangyang. I hope I said that right.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us this afternoon. I'm running to be a delegate. It is my first time running as a delegate to bring principled, accountable, and experienced leadership to our party. Having served in numerous public service roles for the last 10 years, from serving on a youth commission to serving on the school board to working for two amazing women of color elected officials in the Bay Area, such as Councilmember Javanka Beckles and Councilmember Cheryl Davila, working with community on various areas to address, from police accountability to racial justice to environmental justice, housing, public health, protecting renters, immigrants, and the LGBTQ community. I've worked on numerous grassroots candidate campaigns, from city council to mayor to county supervisor, state assembly, and last year, presidential campaign. Some of the legislation that I've worked with in the community, one is declaring racism as a public health crisis, a threat and safety in the city, and committing to eliminating socioeconomic barriers to health equity. Another one I worked on with the community is initiating a just transition to regenerative economy to address the climate emergency we're in, which we call it our COVID recovery. And requests, and the third legislation I've worked on is requesting the state legislature to introduce various actions to value human life and condemn racial injustice and police brutality. These pieces of legislation, we as delegates, when elected, we can influence the state party platform. We can introduce resolutions. We as a team could really put pressure on our local and state Democratic elected officials that this is the solution, legislative solutions that we work with in the community that must turn into action. This is a time to stop the police brutality. This is a time to recognize we're in a climate emergency. As Carrie mentioned earlier, this is a time that we need to save lives. As Nina Turner once said, everything we love is on the line. And our slate, I would think, in the words of Shirley Chisholm, which I've learned from Brenda Crawford, I think we're unbought and unbossed. So I'm proud to work with my fellow teammates here. I'm proud that we are not aligned with any special interests and establishment individuals that gave us the status quo. And lastly, having worked with two elected officials, I remember going to my first time, the Democratic Party convention, and I would see the politics at that state convention, especially when it comes to the voting on officers. That needs to stop. And we are the team that's going to finally bring much needed change and finally bring a voice for the voiceless. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, great. Next, I would love to hear from Brenda Crawford.
Thank you, Mimosa. I have been a member of the Democratic Party since the 60s. I was trying to remember, was it 1962 or 64? I joined the Democratic Party sometime between that time period. I graduated from high school in 1964, so I'm assuming it was around that time. I know it was during the days of Office of Economic Opportunity and Model Cities. So I am really aging myself, and I'm aware of that. And so I asked myself, why, since you've been involved in the Democratic Party for all of these many years, why would you throw your hat in the ring now? Because I think that this country and the state of California and Solano County has never needed more principles that the Democratic Party holds dear than they do today. We need transparency, we need accessibility, we need equity, we need housing, we need mental health services, we need all kinds of services that will improve the quality of life of our people's lives that live in 14 AD. But more than that, the Democratic Party needs to be recentered and grounded in democratic grassroots progressive principles. I heard a couple of my slate mates talk about how we have moved from grassroots more into corporate settings, and that the Democratic Party, in my opinion, is too closely aligned with corporate America, and that the best and the richness of the party lies in the grassroots. The wisdom of the party lies in the grassroots. The passion of the party lies in the grassroots. And so I am running to return that passion, that pride, that focus. You know, Democrats worked on every anti-poverty program in this country. Democrats have been the people who have moved us up the social ladder. If it was not for the Democrats, I think that my family would still, and I'm one of these Mississippi people too, Tom, come from Mississippi along with my Mississippi brother, Tom. My family owes a lot to the Democratic Party. If it were not for the Democrats, I think that we might still be stuck somewhere down in backwoods of Mississippi. I doubt it, but we might. But I'm throwing my hat in the ring because the time for all good Democrats who want to adhere to democratic principles of fair play, equity, access, full inclusion, non-discrimination, all of the things that we fought for, education, childcare, workers' rights. We're not anti-union, we're not anti-workers, we're just progressives, and we want workers to work in industry that meets the needs of the people of the city of Vallejo and of the 14th AD. So that's why I'm running. I'm running because I think those of us who've been around for a long time need to throw our hats in the ring and help this party get back on the right track. Because I really do believe that Democrats in the state of California are on the wrong track right now, and that it is a result of what's happened in this country. We can't help but have been impacted by it. But the time for healing and the time to get refocused is now, and I'm running to help us do that. And I would ask that you would vote for me and know that my dedication and my commitment is 100% for the Democratic Party and for democratic principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Next, we have Susanna Delano. Hopefully I said that correctly.
Pretty close, thank you. And hi, everybody. It's great to be here and an honor to be part of this slate. I'm a mom living in Vallejo. I lived in South Solano County throughout the 2000s and worked at SEIU Local 1280, which some of you might remember. It's since now become Local 1021 and Local 2015 home care workers. But I came to Solano County right about the time that 2,000 low-income caregivers in Solano County had just organized. They had just decided to form a union, and they had minimum wage. They were excluded from the Fair Labor Standards Act, no health benefits, no dental benefits. And basically we worked together over the next couple of years to bargain the first contract that brought wages up appreciably, brought in health and dental benefits. And then we started having to play a lot of defense because we had Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger at that time, who was proposing across the board cuts that really would have devastated the elderly and disabled people who were able to stay safely in their own homes with these caregivers looking out for them. So that was sort of my orientation to Solano County. I was on the Labor Council during that time. I ended up moving to Oakland for about 10 years. And during that time, I worked at Planned Parenthood, Northern California, still based largely in Contra Costa and Solano counties. And then I'm happy to say just about a year and a half ago, I moved back to Vallejo, and I'm so happy to be back here. And I think, the question was, what motivated you to run? And I think in part, I wanted to get to know the activists on the ground here. I had heard about the tremendous work in Vallejo around Orsum and fighting back the cement factory, I think it was, and I was excited to see what was going on. But really what motivated me to think about the party, over 15 years of doing advocacy with Service Employees Union and Planned Parenthood, I interacted with the Democratic Party a lot, but some people I liked and agreed with, some less, some strategies I liked and agreed with, some less. But it really wasn't until Kimberly Ellis decided to run for chair in 2018 that I really stopped and focused on the party as something that could be different and more than what it always has been in my experience. So, in my work around that time, I was increasingly focused on leadership. I had worked with Kimberly in her capacity at Emerge California, where they they train women to run, Democratic women to run for office. And I had just become executive director at Close the Gap, California, where we recruit progressive women to run for the state legislature. So, coming out of those 15 years of, a bunch of nail biter votes on boards of supervisors and in state legislative hearings and on the federal level about reproductive health care and workers' rights, seeing how close those votes, how many went 3-2 the wrong way, I was really, really focused on needing to have leaders who, first of all, really understand working families' values and what it means to truly be progressive and stand up for things that matter to people on the ground versus a more moderate, business-minded Democrat, but also leaders who truly reflect the community. We need more women, we need more leaders of color, we need more LGBTQ leaders, so on and so forth. We're radically out of sync in our country in terms of who our leaders are, as opposed to who the people on the ground in the communities who vote them in are. So Kimberly's candidacy for the chair really excited me. Just imagine, what if the Democratic Party kind of put that urgency and prioritization in terms of values and in terms of demographics, frankly, and life experience of our leaders into motion. So that's how I ended up here being part of this slate. And I'm really excited for, all the incredible impact that this group can make once we become delegates, and, just knowing that we have these young people, Maui and Leilani, who you'll hear from later, coming up and working hard to transform their communities, just couldn't be more exciting to me. So thanks.
Great, thank you so much. That was great to hear about your experience working with the party leaders. That was really helpful to share that, I think, for some people who don't really know how this whole delegate process works. And next, I would like to hear from Matthew Finkelstein.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mimosa. So the question, why am I running to be your delegate? So to answer that, I'd have to say that, first of all, my love for the state of California, my love for this district, it's the reason why I love the party, because I see Democratic Party as a way to benefit our state, a way to benefit our district. And for me, this is a story of transformation. When I first came to Vallejo around 7 years ago, I began getting involved in activism for the first time in my life, and this was really transformative. Myself and members of our slate came together to resist a vocal hate group in our downtown during the farmers market. And we did so with, silly antics. We were singing songs to drown them out. We got local DJs to play over them. And eventually they left, which was great. And then later on, we organized resistance to a toxic cement plant trying to open up next door to school children in Vallejo. And I became more and more involved with our community and responding to their needs. At the same time, I activated with my partner, Susan George, around activism in the Democratic Party. And she and I went to Philadelphia to the DNC in 2016. And that is where I met a range of activists from all over the country. Afterwards, I went to the party with her and we started connecting to activists statewide, and I saw what the party was doing. So I really started to get involved at this point. This is where my life really transformed. And I went from being someone who wasn't terribly involved to someone who felt the next day, simply by being in contact with the party, that I could almost get anything done. And the party, I co-authored resolutions that range on issues from mental health parity to peace in the Middle East, not in any official capacity. I was not a delegate at that point, but I did co-author. It was an amazing feeling. It built coalitions, helped to get things done. I did all that as someone who is not a delegate. And so I hope to really bring those efforts to the next level. I've testified in front of committees and I've helped to organize resolutions and build support for legislation. It's been an amazing process. But the moment that things really, that I decided I really wanted to be your representative in the party was when we witnessed abuse of power and abuse of process in our central committee. For months prior to it, we had been formulating our own Democratic club here in Solano County. I'm the president of the Jewish Democrats of Solano County. And what happened was the Central Committee, they essentially tried to deprive Mayor Steve Young of his endorsement because they were beholden to the same special interests that Carrie was talking about earlier from the refineries and others. And they were not successful in revoking the endorsement they gave, which was duly noticed and legally processed. They have no standing to do so. And then they did the same thing. They ended up giving the endorsement to a candidate who represented those same special interests that were responsible for trying to build a toxic cement factory next to school children in our town. So that was a shocking moment. And I said, you know what, we got to get a voice in the Central Committee. And that's not even enough. We're going to run for delegate. We're going to make sure that special interests never speak on behalf of the people of 8014. And what people in this district deserve are candidates who are real grassroots activists who are not beholden to special interests. And so this, for me, is on arc with the rest of what I consider to be a transformative engagement with the party. And I used to feel like, I think a lot of voters do, disenfranchised from the Democratic Party. But I want to encourage all of you to know that it's changed me as a person. It's made me a better person. And it's caused me to feel that if enough of us decide that we want to make a difference, that it can be done. And I think that the people on this slate have an incredible history of working together to accomplish things. And we want to bring that spirit forward. So if you felt disenfranchised from the party for any reason, I encourage you to re-enfranchise, to vote for us, because this is a very special moment. And we need committed activists like the kind on the slate to represent us on the state level. My name is Matthew Finkelstein, and I'll thank you for your vote.
Thanks, Matthew. I really appreciate that. Next, we will hear from Susan George.
There we go. I'm unmuting myself. There you go. I've done it twice so far. I'm winning. Anyway, it's really great to be here. And thank you again so much for giving this platform to talk about the difference that we can make as AD 14 delegates. I live in Vallejo, California. I moved to Vallejo so that I could get more involved again in performing arts. That's my background. And I'm not sure what happened, but I met a lot of people in Vallejo, and I think the United Democrats had a lot to do with it. And I ended up getting much more involved in politics because it was very exciting. The people here are on the ground, they're gritty, there's so many issues that we can address, and we do so collaboratively. And in fact, many of the people that I've had the privilege of working on a number of issues with, we're running together as delegates. And that is something that our coalition building, our ability to come together and make things happen, our good experiences and our bad experience, our working on our own relationships and making them stronger, we will bring that to our role as delegates. My background, again, is in performing arts. I've also been an executive in nonprofits for many years. I currently am executive director of a nonprofit that works on issues of the well-being and representation in the Jewish community. One of the things that I love about being a delegate, I've been a delegate on the national level as well as the state level. And one of the things I love about being a delegate is you use the issues that are in your own community, in your own assembly district, and you bring them to the state level. You bring representation. And I can give you some specific examples. A couple of people have talked about the cement factory. That is something that had actually held our town hostage for a number of potentially 5 years. And this was a cement factory that would have been an environmental disaster for our city. Not only that, it would have been built in probably the most vulnerable community. So it was also a very environmentally racist project. Now, what we did is we wrote a resolution about that, and it went to the state party. It got, in my opinion, it got improved, and it also started to, it focused on environmental racism. It also focused on the need for better representation in communities, and it talked about district elections. We are now in district elections, and it's changing the face of our city. Our last elections were much beneficial in terms of grassroots representation. We had a resolution that we worked on together. A number of the people here signed it. I'm not the only person that's been a delegate here. We have other representation through the central committees. This one was about concerning police transparency and accountability of records. That is an issue in Vallejo that is very bad, very, very bad. And yet it's statewide, it's nationwide too, but there's a lot of problems on this issue statewide. And so we wrote a resolution about it and it passed. It ended up being very much in sync with legislation that passed a few months later, SB 1421, that Senator Nancy Skinner introduced. And now that legislation is now coming back to be even more to make the records even more transparent, to make police even more accountable. So you see the influence that it can have. And a lot of these things were the timing of them as well. The mental health parity of services, that was inspired by Brenda Crawford and her community and her connections, her relationships in the mental health community, that Matthew Finkelstein and I were able to draft up a resolution on the need for mental health parity of services. That is something that I understand has had longer term impacts with the people that was also quite a bit came from Contra Costa County. And that, again, that was a work of collaboration. Another one was about hate speech. And that has had a significant impact in our party. So this is how something like resolutions, which people think of as such a mundane thing, how it really is a living process. And you bring your needs in your community and you address them and you lobby for them and you build coalitions. There's also legislation that you can do that with. The party endorses legislation officially. So there are several in the area of police accountability, the ability to decertify bad cops. That's something that's on the agenda for 2021. Very, very important. It's very important to Vallejo. It's very important to California. And this is the type of work that I love to do. To say that we don't have a voice We do, but we need to seize that voice. We need to ensure that we have a voice. To think that the days of backroom deals and smoke-filled rooms, to think that those days are gone. Maybe there's a lot less smoke nowadays in them, but believe me, the backroom deals are still going on. Our central committee in that regard is very, very bad. And some people that call themselves progressives, they need to be held accountable for very unprogressive policies, unprogressive behavior, and we will hold them to account. You can count on that. We will, and we will make it better. We will work to make it better.
Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate your comments on all of that. And next we have Leilani Casada. And
hi guys.
Here go from here.
Thank you so much. And I'm in really good company with this slate, so it can be sometimes a little intimidating after hearing everyone speak. But my name is Ilana Casada. I've been a resident of this district for over 20 years. I'm coming off a career in the judicial system at the trial court level that lasted over a decade, 4 of which were as an analyst. As well, I have an extensive history as a community volunteer and in organizational leadership in service and in nonprofit organizations like Vallejo Community Access Television, Active Vallejo 2030, Vallejo. And much of the work I've done over the years has been to benefit youth. I've served as treasurer, secretary, vice president of the Active Vallejo 2030 Club, and we would do benefit programs to serve underserved youth in the city, giving families toiletries, school supplies, clothing, blankets, toys, food. I've also volunteered with the Vallejo Participatory Budget Program and wrote a successful funding proposal for conflict resolution training in youth court to be implemented in 3 Vallejo high schools. Most recently, I've served as secretary for Vallejo Community Access Television, a public education and government television station in the city of Vallejo. In my personal life and in my career and in my service life, I've seen the devastating effects that lack of access to education, technology, and services can have on communities and on individuals. Access to affordable, quality education, vocational training included, leads people to have a better quality of life and careers over jobs. Access to mental health services and quality healthcare for all, regardless of your employment status or who your employer is, helps safeguard people from financial ruin from medical bills. And access to technology, particularly in this time of distance learning and remote working, is more important than ever. And we can look to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we can bridge access to the more base levels, our communities within the district can thrive and innovate. And the benefit of advocating for programs like these is that it helps the entire community. And that's what I'll work towards if elected, pushing for programs and leadership that support our communities and that work towards bridging access gaps. I'm born to Filipino immigrants, and my father served in the First War in the Gulf. My grandfather served in World War II as a second lieutenant. After we came to America, after my father's deployment, we moved to what people would call the hood. And it was community volunteers, teachers, and mentors who kept me off the wayward path. And it's always been my passion to be a helper in my community, particularly a helper of youth. In my career in the court, I saw firsthand how programs like the state's traffic amnesty programs help people to get their driver's licenses and get rid of old traffic debt that was weighing them down, and how the Guardianship and Conservatorship Omnibus Reform Act in 2007 helped to mitigate abuse by calling for more frequent investigations. I think policy and law is always going to be a passion of mine, but I want to be on the side that affects change rather than be on the side of administration or the judiciary. And so I'm looking for your support. What motivates me is being there for the community. We live in a world where we can move out of the winner-loser model, and we can make the winner-winner model, the winner-winner model real. I just want us to work together to uplift and empower our entire district together. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. And next, we'll be hearing from Steve Silen.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Hi. First of all, my name is Steve Silen. I'm running for this because I believe changes need to be made in our county in the Democratic Party. I have been an active member of the Democratic Party for 60 years. I started out when I was 9 years old, stuffing envelopes back in the Bronx, New York for the Reformed Democratic Party. So I've been around. I'll get to why I'm running. You'll see as I'm talking why I'm running. Let me give you a little bit about my history. I'm a 25-year teacher administrator in the Vallejo School District, 23 years as teaching. All 23 years of those, I was on the executive board of the Vallejo Educational Association, which is the Vallejo Teachers Union. I was also heavily involved in CTA, the California Teachers Association, for many years. And as a national delegate representing Vallejo in the NEA, the National Educational Association convention, also for many years. So when I talk about what I'm talking about, just keep in mind that I'm coming from a very strong union background. I am a strong union. I think unions have done great things for our people, our country. We wouldn't be where we are today without unions. Now, why am I running? I'm going to address three things. I have an 11-point platform. If you want to see the rest of what I believe in, go to Steve Sillin at AD14, all lowercase, and you'll see my 11-point platform. With all my grievances, I also have solutions there for you. But the three things I want to talk about first is environmental justice. We live in two counties, Solano and Contra Costa, where there is a tremendous amount of refineries. There are 3 refineries in Contra Costa County, 1 in Vallejo. I call it the rectangle of death. Parts of Contra Costa County have the highest cancer rate in the United States, and it's because of these refineries. These refineries are usually placed where there are mostly people of color or lower income people living. The exception is Benicia, okay? But in Contra Costa it is. Now, there's a reason for that. They don't have a voice, and we need to bring their voice out. This refineries, especially Vallejo, has been a strong supporter of the Democratic Party in Vallejo. Strong supporter. That gets me to why I'm another point. As a union person, I am tremendously offended by the Napa Solano Labor Council. I don't know why they call themselves a labor council, because they really don't represent the people. They represent big money. They represent Vallejo. They have supported in the last 3-4 elections every candidate that Vallejo tried to buy. Last election for our mayor, Benicia, Vallejo spent $250,000 on the opposition to Mayor Young. And that opposition was supported by the Napa Solano Labor Council. A big part of Napa Solano Labor Council is the Vallejo Police Officers Association. And this has been the elephant in the room that nobody's addressed yet, but I'll take it on. The Vallejo Police Department is corrupt. There's no way around it. It's corrupt, it's dangerous, it's killing our citizens. In the state of California, when a school underperforms greatly, if it underperforms financially or economically, the state comes in right away, takes it over, and runs it until the school is back either educationally or economically. Why can't we do that with our police departments? Why can't the Attorney General come in, take over poor police departments? And it's obvious what the poor police departments are in the state. You don't need to go look hard. The Attorney General is not doing his job. And as your representative to the Assembly Delegate for 14, I will push for the state Attorney General to take over police districts that are underperforming. That is a must. We need to do that. Also, I am very involved with seniors in the county. I'm on several federal and local committees. Our seniors are in bad shape in this county, and our seniors represent about 22% of the population of Solano County. Okay, they represent a disproportionate amount of the homeless. Okay, we need to get them out off the streets and into housing. Okay, again, if you want to see my full platform, all lowercase, Steve Sillin at AD14. See the 11 things that get me angry. But I am the most angry about the labor situation. I don't know how they call them labor. I will end with that. Thank you for sticking around so long and hearing me.
Thanks, Steve, and sorry about mispronouncing your last name. I apologize. And last but not least at all, we have Phil Wilson, also known as Maui, and I will turn it over to you.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to say I'm also thankful to be part of this slate and meeting everybody, or not meeting everybody, but meeting a few new people here. I got involved and interested in doing this. Miss Brenda talked to me about it a few times and just getting more involved in this area. Sorry, getting more involved in this aspect of organizing for a while, and I just kind of shied away from it because I always didn't see myself as going into politics or getting involved in politics. It wasn't something that I was interested in. I felt like a lot of the things that I was doing were more of moral issues, and unfortunately those moral issues had turned into political debates and platforms. For me, I am a young African-American identifying male that's a member of the LGBT community, and that being said, intersections are not lost on me, and I believe that there's a lot of different intersections that come up within politics and in the Democratic Party, as well as, you know, the nation as a whole, that kind of get lost and people kind of sidestep them, but they're there and they're important. So whereas, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander is something that's been talked about for a long time. It's not always necessarily good for that gander or that goose. So my position is to kind of come in and give more of a platform to the people that I've been working with that have been on the outside, I guess, kind of more disenfranchised, not necessarily in the city council meetings or knowing what's going on within the California Democratic Party. Like myself, I didn't know about the youth commission of the California Democratic Party and things like that. And those are things that I believe a lot of people need to know about, and there would be much more buy-in and interest in those things. So what I'm hoping to bring into this is accountability. For those of you that do know me, or don't know me, I guess, I actually started the Vallejo Peace Project in 2015, and it was more so about creating safe spaces for disenfranchised groups and giving people a platform. One issue that we've been very relentless on is the policing issues in Vallejo. This isn't an issue that just impacts Vallejo. It's impacted cities across the nation, honestly. And one of the most successful areas that's close to us is in Oakland. Oakland's been under oversight for about a decade now, and they've seen incredible changes in, you know, their policing practices. You know, they're not killing people as often. That's something we need here in Vallejo. It's not enough to just talk about it. There's things that need to be changed, that things need to go into effect to create accountability. People that are, you know, representing this party need to represent the people as well. And that's what I hope to bring to this. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And
Thank you so much. And thanks for being patient to get to your turn. I appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. She's just going to quickly remind people the website and how to register to vote. And then our first question will be directed to Carrie, and it'll be about how many people can be elected and what is bullet voting.
Great. Thank you also to all the candidates. It's very exciting to have you running and to hopefully be representing us very soon. So again, for those watching, we just want to remind you about how to vote and how to register. You need to go to admelections.com to register to vote. And again, make sure that everything that you're putting in that registration matches the way that you are registered in the California in the Democratic Party. Otherwise, you'll get pumped out. So, and you need to do that by the 11th, by January 11th. They will then send you a paper ballot, which you need to get back into the mail as soon as possible, make your choices, and then turn it around because they do need to receive it by January 27th for it to be counted. So just want to re-emphasize that. And then let's move on to some questions. So the first question is from Magda, and she asks, how many folks can we elect to our district? And sort of related to that, and we're going to ask Carrie to answer this actually, can you speak to bullet voting when making your choices? Thank you.
Yeah, I can talk about bullet voting, but someone keep me honest. Is it 12 or 14 people? 14 for AD 14. I got to remember that. So it's while you're allowed to elect and vote upon for 14 candidates, we respectfully ask that you vote for this slate of 10 candidates, because in doing so, you will, what is technically called bullet voting, when you leave those additional 4 votes unvoted upon, that concentrates your vote on the candidates of choice. And that would be these 10 people. So we ask for you to vote for the Progressives for Change in AD 14. And then we will be sending emails, and please follow us on Facebook. All of us have Facebook pages dedicated to this very election. And if you vote for just the 10 of us, that ensures that we will have more votes overall. So that's what bullet voting is.
Thank you. I know bullet voting can be confusing. So it's great to know we just have 10 of you, and that's our 10 votes that we want to cast. This question came in from Candy, and this is open to maybe if two people have or so want to answer this one. With the majority of Democrats not leaning towards progressive change, how will you personally fight for reform in the party, and what do you feel is the most important thing you want to change first? Who would like to answer that one? Steve, okay, go ahead.
Well, the most progressive change would be for labor to be labor again. And as I mentioned before, second thing is for the people to take over their police department in here, especially in Vallejo. I'm lucky to live in Benicia. I'm very lucky to live in Benicia. Besides the incident of an officer hitting a dog on the nose, we have it pretty good here at our police department. They very respond well to our needs, and they represent us, and they do a good job. Unfortunately, half a mile away in Vallejo, it's just the direct opposite. So I think all progressives, anybody that calls them progressive, like the other candidates that call them progressive, who have worked for people that were supported by the Vallejo Police Officers Association, either ran campaigns or voted for or endorsed them in the past, they need to be held accountable and not be called progressives. So I think that's one thing we need to do. We need to get the people, we need to get more jobs. We need more equity in jobs and housing and education. The pandemic just made that worse. It was bad to begin with. People tried to hide it under the rug, but the pandemic made it worse. So we need to speak up for all people. That unfortunately, the Democratic Party in our neck of the woods represents the people that are in power and not the people that need power. It's exclusive, not inclusive, and we need to make it more inclusive. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Tom, did you want to speak to this one, or does anyone else want to comment on this question? Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that like a lot of the people on the slate we're not just people that are going to show up to a rally to take a selfie. These are people who have been in the streets. They've been at their city council meetings. We've been at the supervisors meetings. And, I think for us, especially like for the candidates from Vallejo, like there are some really heartfelt warriors on this issue for the sake of justice for the local families. These are our families. These are our friends. You know what I mean? The issue of police violence is very real to us. It's very real to the country right now. I think that if change is going to come forward in our state, I mean, AB 14 it's got to be a big part of that discussion. And, with champions, longtime champions like Maui Phil, like Brenda Crawford on board, who have just been in front of this, and I mean, these are people that have cried together with people who are on the forefront of this war against the right of citizens. And I think that that's got to be one of the most pressing progressive issues that we could deal with. I think healthcare for all got to be back on the table for California, like in a big way. AB 5, I mean, we got to. I mean, me and Susan were very involved in healthcare for all. We were campaigning all over the state in Sacramento and lobbying for it. And I think that's for sure got to be one of the biggest issues for progressives in the face of COVID. How are we going to get through this crisis if people can't afford to pay for the basic health care that they need to keep them from getting sick, pay for their vaccines? I mean, that's got to be back on the table. So those, I'd say, are like two of the biggest issues for progressives in our state, along with the environment. Anyway, I'll pass on to who's next.
Great, thank you. Riscal, do you want to go next?
Yes, just to add to what Steve and Matthew said. First, I'm proud to be an SAU member, working through the city of Berkeley. And having served on a Progressive Alliance steering committee in the Bay Area, we had California Nurses Association at the table, SIU, climate justice groups and other community groups at the table. And having been to previous CalDem conventions with my council member, we just have to build alliances with other strong progressives in other assembly districts, which I know of. Like, for example, one of my friends, Bobby Lopez, she's in 8015. There's another one I know in 16 and the other districts, to really elevate the issues that are happening in our community and lobby, take action when we get elected as delegates of bring much changes to, or whether it be introducing resolutions and other types of legislation, changing the platform. We got to organize.
So can you repeat the question, Mimosa?
Yes. The question is, with the majority of Democrats not leaning towards progressive change, how will you personally fight for reform in the party, and what do you feel is the most important thing to change first?
I'll take a crack at that. One of the things that I think is important is I think we need to get back to our basic core values. I think the Democratic Party has strayed away from what made us great, what made us the champion of people who were not dealt perhaps adequate hand in this country, who made us the champion of the underdog. We have to get back to that. We have to cut the influence of corporations in the Democratic Party. We have to make sure that our police departments understand that they are public servants, that they are peace officers, that they're not a group of killers. We have to do the things that made the Democratic Party great in the first place, which is to promote equity, social justice, full access for everyone, to look at the kinds of services that we need to improve the quality of people's lives. That's what the Democratic Party did. That's what the Democratic Party did for a little Black girl who lived in Mississippi, who did not understand how she was going to get her fair share or her opportunity to excel until she became involved with the Democrats. So I want, if there is someone out there, some young person who's looking to get involved in the kind of work that feeds your soul and that provides services for your community, to look at our Democratic Party as an option of getting involved in those kinds of activities. Our current Democratic Party is not attractive to that way. If you are a corporation, if you have money, if you are influencer, then the Democratic Party could be for you. I want the Democratic Party to be for the guy who's walking down the streets, who is not even in touch with his political power. I want the Democratic Party to be the kind of party that is open to all folks and not just a selected few. As Steve said, the needs among our people are great, particularly our older Americans and our older people in the 14th AD, and we need to pay attention and bring the party back to where it used to be. And one last thing I'll say before I'm quiet. The folks on this slate have a history of working together, as Matthew said. I've worked with Maui, I've worked with Susan, I've worked with Matthew, I've worked with Rascal, I'm learning to work with Susanna, and I've worked with Steve, and I'm working with all of the folks on this slate. We aren't just a group of unassociated people who got together. We worked really hard to make sure that we had shared values and that our strategies were sound and that the work that we do would benefit all of the folks in the 14th AD, not just the folks in Vallejo, but all the folks in the 14th AD. And among that work that is critically important is working for our youth, working for seniors, working for environmental justice, and working for mental health and all of the other areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Maui, if you want to go ahead on this one.
Sorry, can I get the question repeated one more time as well? It was,
Yeah, no problem. Let me just click back to that page. With the majority of Democrats not leaning towards progressive change, how will you personally fight for reform in the party? And what do you feel is the most important thing to change first?
personally, I think that throughout time, I've proven to be incredibly outspoken, and integrity is something that's really important to me. And integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching. So it's not saying the right things all the time or, posting the right thing. It's actually doing the right thing. And that's something that's very near and dear to me. So the way I see myself doing that is by maintaining the fight for accountability and transparency. Those are two things that I think are lacking. I think that a lot of times people may go into these situations with, good intent, or they might, run for a city council seat or a mayor, whatever, president, with good intent. However, without the accountability, that intent isn't necessarily worth anything. So my thing is to maintain the accountability, and that trickles down through everything. One of the things that's most important to me, naturally, I am a young Black man. So living in Vallejo, it's literally dangerous for me being outside with the police that we have driving around. And that's not something that people really understand. I grew up and I had to get the conversation from my mom and my parents and my grandparents about what I do when I'm pulled over by a police officer, which isn't something that people should have to do. And, I've had friends, family members lose loved ones to police violence here in Vallejo. And though there's been a lot more attention on this, it's also been a lot more detrimental to the Black community, because you're now seeing people that look like you, your brother, your cousin, your best friend, your sister, your auntie, getting gunned down for no reason and nothing being done. So accountability and police reform and accountability are the top two things for me. And I believe that they're they kind of interchange with each other. So.
Thank you so much. And the last person on this question will be Tom, and then Sarah will ask the next question.
Thanks. Yeah, so with regards to the party, one of the things that I've always ran or tried to do is to work within the party to make change. And I know sometimes it feels like you want to take a sledgehammer to something to make it better, but I think a lot of times by simply trying to move the needle slightly, you actually can change the course of a ship. A small change in a rudder can actually change the whole direction. And I think really what the Democratic Party overall, not just California, not just Solano County, but overall needs is to go back to our grassroots. That's why you see a lot of people getting disenfranchised. That's why you see a lot of people who are really sort of tired of the same old corporate style top-down discussion points being forced on people, and also having people ignore what the man on the street is trying to say. That's why people are getting disenfranchised with the Democratic Party. And I think also the other thing is we have to go local. A lot of people are focused on the national stuff, focused on Georgia, et cetera. That's very important, especially for the next 4 years where we have a lot of cleanup to do after this hellish 4 years that we've been through for the past, for the past 4 years. We have a lot of cleanup. So Georgia is important, but hopefully that will be decided on the 5th and we can move on. But we have to start thinking local. We have to start seeing where everything is connecting. Everything from police and the way they are acting, and also the fact that we have no citizen oversight. The citizen oversight that's supposed to be over the Vallejo Police Department or any police department that is acting in the same way as the Vallejo Police Department is not effective. And by that, I'm saying the City Council of Vallejo. I know we just had a couple of new people elected. We have a new mayor who's coming in who has been a strong advocate for police oversight. But I am working with a group of people that we're working on a change to the city bylaws to actually have our citizens elected by district, the same district that the City Council is, to be an oversight commission. Not let the City Council appoint a commission that would oversight them, have them be responsible to their constituents, and also have campaign finance reform in that so they cannot be bought. They cannot take money from the VPOA. The other thing is our environmental policies, like ORSUM and the crude by rail and all these other items where we're trying to get people off of the highways and everything to make our air cleaner and preserve what natural resources we have. That's all interconnected. So it's not just a Vallejo thing. It's not just a Benicia thing. It's not just a Bay Area thing. It's a world thing. And it's also, especially the US, we are the biggest consumers of oil. We are the ones who are polluting the planet with all the cars that are out there. In the first days of the pandemic, one of the bright spots was that we had some of the clearest skies across the planet because of lack of cars being on the highway. And we need to go back to that. We need to find ways of working from home. We're all working from home, at least in my profession as a computer geek. There, I said it. Yes, I own it. I am a geek. But we need to find ways to make that a reality. And I think in the new paradigm that the pandemic has shown us, we're going to see more and more of that. And so that's my ways in which I look at how we can change the party to make it more responsible to the average man on the street. Because I think global, but act local.
Okay, great. That leads right into the next question Sarah's going to ask, and hopefully we can hear from some of the other candidates who haven't answered any questions yet. I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you. The next question is, so Tom spoke a little bit to this as well, but what do you see as some of the biggest environmental issues facing AD District 14? Who would like to speak to that?
I will.
Okay,
Oh, Susan, go ahead.
I know probably many of us have quite a bit to say about this. Again, I will focus on the local and how it can also, we can segue that into the state level. First of all, I don't think we can speak enough about the problematic union, the Napa Solano Central Labor Council, and how their control, they basically have held us hostage on many levels for good policy. And it's time for that to change. There's some bright spots that is shifting, but we can't give up. We can't give up the momentum. When these unions support crude by rail, when they support big oil, when they support a toxic cement factory in your town that will harm children and particularly elderly people, when the Attorney General had to say, look, this is environmentally racist, and then finally they would back off. But even when they backed off, they said that those activists were to blame. These are not progressives. Let us be very clear. These types of unions are not progressive. We need to address it. We need to let them know this is not going to work. We know what they're up to, and we have to make change. We have to call people in who are willing to be called in to realize, and if they're not, then we're going to call them out. The other thing is the state party has an environmental caucus, and it's led by a very, very committed person who is dedicated. And I would like to recommend, I would like to recommend that we join that caucus and that we become more involved, or that we bring the state level of the work that's being done there about the rising sea levels, about fracking, about fossil fuel domination, that we start to address that at the state level, but then also bring that into our own cities, our own towns, our own districts, so that there's a definite connection. We did it with other issues, and we can do it with this issue, but it needs a lot more attention. It needs a lot more attention.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Steve, maybe? Steve, are you muted? Or are you? I don't hear you.
What was the question?
Just about what some of the biggest environmental issues are that are facing AD District 14.
The biggest environmental issue is big oil. There's no question about it. Vallejo could spend $250,000 on an election. The Napa Solano Council could try to buy Arsaman. Okay. We need to get big oil out of it. We need to pass, and each local constituency needs to pass a law limiting financial contributions. Okay. So people like Napa Solano Labor Council, people like Vallejo can't contribute hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to get the candidates in. Luckily, their support lately has become the kiss of death, which is good. But it's taken many, many years for that to happen. We got to limit campaign contributions, and that will solve a lot of our problems in this county.
Thank you. Leilani, okay, thank you. Leilani, would you like to answer that as well?
Sure, yeah. I also think one of the big environmental issues in our district is single-use plastics. And I know that there's been over the past decade work being done towards getting rid of single-use plastics. It's always getting stopped with, it's not quite feasible. However, we have seen legislation eliminating, legislation and ordinances eliminating plastic bags and eliminating plastic straws. So I think we can extend that to more single-use plastics and plastic packaging so that we can create a more sustainable future.
Excellent. Thank you.
I can go.
Sure. Okay.
Or Rascal, go ahead.
Rascal?
Okay, Carrie, and then I'd like to let Carrie go first.
Oh, thank you so much, Rascal. Oh, well, I would like to make the connection between single-use plastics and the fossil fuel industry, because the fossil fuel industry right now is taking advantage of the pandemic and making sure that they get as much of their little plastic pellets that make everything plastic, petroleum-based, out into stores, into restaurants, into everything that we're going, okay, this is temporary because this is a pandemic, but they are building their capacity to make plastics right now because they know that the future of transportation is not fossil fuel driven. And so they want to keep their refineries going. They want to keep, their apparatus going. And so plastics is now feeding the fossil fuel industry. And so at NRDC, we've been working on this issue a little bit. There's other NGOs that are taking the lead as well. But if I can get back to the local part of it, I ran for city council of Benicia in 2018. And it wasn't just the Napa Solano Labor Council that put over $300,000 into a PAC that said that they were against Carrie Birdsai. It was the state building trades, and it also happened in other refinery communities throughout the nation. And so I think it goes up, it comes all the way down from the Koch brothers and the others that are pulling the strings. And so as much as we can do to educate folks on the ties between big money and the fossil fuel industry and their desperation to stay afloat no matter what, was what I was trying to do in 2018 and many years before. And if we can turn on those local light bulbs and get better representation on our city councils, on, through the Democratic Party, and we start elevating these conversations that these very powerful people don't want us to have, I think that's where we can make a change. All of these folks on this slate know that. And that's why we're banding together. We each have an area of expertise and we each have an area of passion. And obviously this is mine.
Great, thank you. Rascal?
Yeah, and just to add to what Carrie said, I remember years ago when I was working, this happened after when my previous boss, who was a council member in Contra Costa County, Javanka Beckles, in her reelection, Chevron spent $3 million to defeat her and her fellow candidates. Thankfully, my boss prevailed, and I was honored to work under her in her second term on many pieces of legislation, such as winning $100 million of new taxes and regulations on Chevron. In addition, one of the pieces of legislation I've worked on in the city of Berkeley is introducing a policy to phase out the sale of gas-powered vehicles by 2025. Governor, we worked on this legislation in 2019, and Governor Newsom months ago announced he'd like to look at 2035. But having worked with experts in the community on climate justice, that's why we want to do 2025, because we're in a climate emergency. Berkeley was one of the earlier cities in this nation to declare climate emergency. And then since then, almost 3 years later, over 1,700 local governments worldwide have declared climate emergency. As delegates, when elected, what we can do is build a movement amongst other delegates in other districts to introduce a resolution before the powers that be that we have to support a climate emergency. Everything is intertwined in it. We also can also introduce a resolution that which could mirror off the city of Berkeley, because in the city of Berkeley, we have policies where any candidate runs for office in Berkeley, they're not allowed to accept any money from corporation or PACs. They can only accept up to $50 individual contribution. So taking those kind of policies that are already established here locally in the state, we can fight for it as delegates.
Great. And let me see. Susanna, do you want to speak to that, or shall I give you another question?
Yeah, why don't we move ahead?
Okay. What can Democrats, so we're closing in on time. It is 6:31 right now. So this will be probably one of the last questions. But what can Democrats in AD 14 who support you guys do to make sure that we get you elected?
Ooh, that's a great question. There's a huge role to play for anyone and everyone out there watching who feels compelled by what we're talking about here. This is a really fast timeline. This is an election that not a lot of people even know is happening, but a massive number of people are eligible to vote. They just have to know that it's happening and that they have to proactively request a ballot by January 11th. That's next Monday, not tomorrow, but the Monday after. So I'm sure my slate mates here will have some ideas on how they can help, but we would love to have people who want to volunteer to make phone calls, to send text messages. There are literally tens of thousands of people, Democrats who are committed and believe in progressive values out there in this district who don't know this is happening. And, you know, we have a lot of rich values and energy in this slate, but make no mistake, we are the underdog. Other slates out there are much, have a lot of resources and institutional support behind them. That for various reasons, you know, we've got us, we've got people power. So the more we can leverage, the better. And, you know, I didn't respond directly to the last question, but I really do, you know, kind of building on what Carrie said about, you know, the kinds of environmental issues that are at stake in our assembly district really do go all the way up to the Koch brothers. This is the ball game. I mean, we're a safe Democratic district, we're blue. And so what that means is on the ground, this is a battle between progressive and moderate Democrats in a lot of ways. And I think, you know, for me as a mom of a middle schooler in Benicia, right by the refinery, kids are who is affected. You know, the most vulnerable are affected. And when we talk about environmental risk, you know, it's Black and brown communities like those who would have been impacted by Orsom and Vallejo and others, you know, down into Contra Costa that get hit first. And so we need to be the front line. We need to really draw a line there and dig deep into the resources of this community to pave the way for new leadership. So if others want to chime in about ways that people can help out, you know, maybe we'll share contact information or something like that, but can definitely use some eyes and ears and volunteer time over the next week. Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. And people can also go onto your website, which is the AD14 progressivesforchange.org, I believe, or .com. I believe that is the right address, but we'll make sure. Anyone else want to speak to that? Both .org and .com. Thank you, Tom. Anybody else? Looking.
In addition to doing all of the, you know, the mechanical things to actually vote, I believe that there's a lot of power if we just hold the vision. Let's hold the vision for change here in Vallejo. and in the 14th AD. Let's hold the vision for change in the Democratic Party, because we so desperately need change. And let's hold the vision that the Democratic Party that we all love and that we've all dedicated so many years of our lives to can get back to the party that we all grew up with, that we all loved, that fought for the underdog, and that had limited influence in corporate America. We want a grassroots Democratic Party. We want it to be a large part. That is not the only part of the Democratic. We understand corporate influence is important in terms of being able to operate as a big system, political organization. But the Democratic Party has to come back home. It has to come back to what won them Georgia, which were Democrats on the streets, making phone calls and doing what Democrats do. We work and we hit the streets. And that's what we have to bring this party back to, the 14th AD.
Okay, that's great. And unless Tom, would you like to speak to that? I see you.
Yeah, so also, we are also putting out there a survey, a platform survey. I think we're the only slate that's doing this because we want to represent you. You can go on our website, 8014 progressesforchange.org, and it's a 4, not a FOR. And it will be, if people who are on the different social platforms can put that into the comments, slate mates, because we're asking people to fill out a survey to let us know what's important to you, what's important in this district for you guys that are living here along with us, because we're all living here and we're all community members here in 8014. And I'm not sure, in fact, I am sure. Any other slates, they're not doing this. They're not trying to get your feedback. And I think that's something that we're bringing to the table in our willingness and desire to represent you, and that we want to hear from you, not just be elected and then vanish for 2 years. And I think I speak for everyone else whenever we say that we're going to be out in the community, we're going to be out doing things, visiting all over. So get used to this mug. Because once I'm elected, because I know we're all going to get elected, you're going to see this mug and all these other better looking mugs than mine out in 8014. Because we're going to be out there, we're going to be finding out what you need. And my sister from another mister from Mississippi, we're going to be out there trying to find some good food too, right, Brenda?
That's exactly right, my brother.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So 8014 tells where the good spots are, because I'm healthy and I like to keep healthy. All right. So anyone else got some stuff? Come on, speak up.
Well, I think it bears repeating that the way to get us elected is to vote for the 10 of us, We have already done the vetting of where we stand on whether or not we are beholden to any special interests, and you are guaranteed that we are not. That is something that's very important, and I don't believe the same can be said about another slate. And so it's important to also ask tough questions of other people that are running. If you're considering, ask them tough questions, don't hesitate. And then compare to what we've talked about, how upfront we've been, how transparent we are. And these are the same values, the values that we live in our everyday lives. We bring that to the party. You know, this is just a little story. I was talking to someone who's actually a California representative on the DNC. And I was telling him about these concerns that actually this Labor Council and the Vallejo Police Officers Association, they could actually bankrupt our city again. And I was telling him that this person and that certain people on this Labor Council is highly problematic. It's really important that they not be delegates. And he said, well, they voted for me to the DNC. And that really shook me, because we need people who do not put their own self-interest first. We need people that put the interest of their district first. and you can count on us for that. So please vote for the 10 of us. That's one of the best ways. And tell your friends.
Great. That's right. Fantastic. All right. So I think our time has definitely is coming to an end, and I just want to, Mosa and I and everybody watching, we want to thank you again for being here tonight, all the candidates and everyone who's watching tonight. If you know folks that did not get to join us tonight, this forum has definitely been recorded, and so we can share that, and you can share that with them. That would be great. If you live in Vallejo, we definitely encourage you to join our Vallejo Active Voters group. It's a hub for resources and progressive action on all things that affect the residents of Vallejo. And we encourage you to like and follow all of the candidates at in the slate, the AD 14 Progressives for Change slate, at their website, Facebook, and the individual candidates' profiles as well, and share that, and just keep talking. All right.
Thanks, everyone. I encourage you to share this information with people who weren't able to join tonight. And thank you so much to all of the delegates. It was really amazing to hear everything you had to say. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all.
It's still recording.
Yep, going right now to a video if I can get it to work. Always something. Like the Brady Bunch.